little midnight run here. It's not midnight, but it's late anyway. About 9 o'clock. Found a guy on my local Sumner County buy, sell, and trade website or page on Facebook. It's got a LT2000 Craftsman riding mower, 25 horse Briggs & Stratton on it. Oh, that was nice stop there, buddy. Just right across 6 lanes of traffic, counting the 2 turning lanes. No stop, no nothing, just right across. Good way to get yourself in an accident. Anyway, he had this 25 horse LT2000 tractor that's not that old. Looks like it's only a couple of years old. He had it in there for $400. Wasn't his tractor, he was selling it for somebody. I called him up and I desperately need it because I'm embarrassed to even show what my yard looks like right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but all the recent videos that I've done, I've cut all the pictures of the yard and the surroundings of my truck out for a purpose because it's embarrassingly tall. I'll put it this way, I haven't cut my grass yet this year. My poor dogs, they go out in the pen out front to use the bathroom and it's hide and seek with them. Went out and tried to crank up a tractor that my brother-in-law had. I got a battery pack to jump off all the tractors because I know for a fact every one of them's got a dead battery in them now. They have to have, as long as they set, because I didn't crank them up over the winter like I usually do. This MTD of my, or actually it's Yard Machine by MTD that my brother-in-law had, I actually got for him from a couple way south of Nashville. He was going to rebuild it, and then I was going to get it back from him. He actually drove the thing around town for a while, and I wasn't going to tell him no or try to get it back because I actually had something at the time to cut grass with. I don't know if the thing didn't like sitting or what, but it had a half a tank of gas in it. I put some fresh gas in it, and then I dumped a little down in the carburetor to get it primed, to get it to start. It turned over just fine. Motor spun free. And about the time that spark plug hit, the whole shooting match went up in flames. I'm talking about the whole inside of the motor compartment, all down underneath it. It's like the carburetor just dumped out the little bit that I spilled in it, and it was leaking out everywhere, just spreading all over the place. Because when I touched that the jumper box positive terminal, or positive cable to the positive terminal on the starter, it spun, like I said, about 4 or 5 times. And as soon as that valve opened up and the spark from the spark plug hit, it was just a massive whoosh. And my field went to burning, and I'm out there with my out-of-shape butt trying to put this stuff out, trying to stomp out the grass, trying to put out the fire on the tractor, maybe save the engine or whatever. Engine still spins fine, but you won't be putting the carburetor back together for starters because it melted. Not the actual carburetor itself, just the plastics that hold the air breather. It melted part of the front end. Melted some of the wires, which my brother-in-law had jerry-rigged a fog light on the front of it, and I'm not so sure that one of those wires for that fog light may not be bare, and probably help me out with the whole sparking situation. Anyway, it caught fire, and it's kind of like the I've got another one that it's a 14 horse, I think, that I'd actually mowed a little bit with last year after my son leaving. All right, here's the scenario. I'd still be mowing with the John Deere with no problem if my son hadn't left his little fishing cages laying all over the stinking yard. He did, and I almost hit them a couple of times with the blades, which would have really ticked me off because those blades are expensive for that thing. And on the grand scheme of things, are they super expensive? No, but they're a pain in the tail to get off, and I don't like sharpening blades. I'd rather just take them off when I have to, only when I have to, and replace them. Well, I used my brother-in-law's what the heck is it called? He had a True Value mower that he also has some fog lights rigged up on, but they're the little bitty little $17 jobs from Walmart. And I used that to mow with last year because the John Deere tires were flat. The mower runs fine. It's still a champ. It's got a Kawasaki motor on it, and I didn't like those at first, but that thing has been a trooper. It stood up to all kinds of abuse. It stood up to all kinds of abuse because we've had that tractor for 7 years now, which 7 years for a riding mower, that may not be that big to some people until you consider, one, we got it for free, and it's actually a 1993 riding tractor. Now, it's the beefy sucker. It's the GT242, I think it is. It's been so long since I've had the hood on the thing to know what it is. I'm kind of guessing. I think that was the model number, GT242. Got the great big back tires on it that even though they're turf tires, they're big enough and wide enough, you don't get stuck very often. When you do, you're really stuck. But that thing's also light enough that I can drag it right back out of the hole and sit back down on it and go at it again. No big deal. Well, what I'm planning on doing right now is, since this yard machine decided to become a firebomb, I'm going to go ahead and take the front tires off of it for right now and put on my John Deere. Just take rim and all, rim, bearings, the whole nine off, and put them on my John Deere for now. And for some stupid reason, our Walmart here will not buy more than one of those front tires for that thing. It's the 8x6.5, and they had one back in the fall. I'm pretty convinced it's the same tire that they had at the first of spring. And I was in there 2 days ago, and it's still just that one tire. I guess Walmart doesn't think people actually need tires for the riding mowers, or that you're only going to need one. Maybe you got a special order them now because we live in a podunk area where there's hardly any population, even though everybody needs new tires for their mowers. I gotta jump off right here, even though it's nowhere near where I'm going, and get me some gasoline. Because I'm on extra. I think that's what E stands for, isn't it? Extra? I don't know. And I sure hope that's not Johnny Law behind me, because I do not have any lights on my trailer. My truck lights ought to be good enough. Come on. Yeah, $3.15 a gallon. It's cheaper here than it is at the house. I'll take it. I'm just hoping nobody wrecks into me. Oh, I forgot about those. Hey, I've got a set of magnetic taillights. I forgot all about them. So I can actually, God, freaking idiot. Jerk off come ripping across the dang parking lot, 40 miles a dang hour. That don't make any sense. Pulled in here on the second orange mark. Oh boy. That's what I need, Sumner County Sheriff. But I pulled in here on the second orange mark, and which means it was like right there ready to run completely out. Trying to be all stealthy and things and not draw any attention to myself, which is going to be kind of hard since I got YouTube decals on the back of my truck and people trying to run into the side of my truck like that tool was doing when I pulled in. Bigger than day, just ripping across the parking lot about 40 miles an hour and about plowed into the side of me. This fellow wanted to, well, what he wanted for this tractor, like I said, was $400. And I I just, much as I'd like to, because I really need a 25 horse or at least a 20 horse to mow my yard well with, and it not get overheated or tear up all the time. I really would have liked to have given him the $400, but the fact that it's as old as it is, the hood's cracked, it's got a tire that's leaking. He said the carburetor may need clean, but he told me it could probably use a good oil change, which I'd already intended to do. Probably needs a carburetor cleaned, which is no big deal. It's a pain in the butt to have to do, but I'd rather clean it and the thing run nice and smooth and clean and not have to worry about it. I'd rather do that than not have any problems with it later. I don't mind doing preventative maintenance, and I always when I buy used equipment, first thing I do is drain that oil just to see if it's full of stuff or not. If it's got a bunch of metal shavings in it, may not have been the best deal. Upside is, even if it does, say this motor is just crap, I've got a 20 horse to put right back on it. 5 horsepower is not going to make that big a difference to me. Like I said, as long as I've got at least a 20 to put back on there, I'm ready to rock and roll. Now, I've got that 20 horse for my that's kind of odd. No, my 20 horse is an LT 1024 because it was originally a 24 horsepower Cub Cadet, but I think it'll be alright. I could have 2 20 horsepower plus mowers to cut that grass with, and with the exception of the John Deere, because I'll run that John Deere until it literally falls apart and I can't find replacement parts anymore. That little thing, that little Kawasaki motor, like I said, when I first got it, I'm thinking Kawasaki, it's a Jap motor, it ain't gonna be worth a crap. And it stood up better than any Tecumseh, which isn't hard. Stood up. Oh, my truck neutraled out. That's not good. Stood up better than any of the Briggses that I've had, which is really saying something, because I've had some really long-lasting, nice Briggs motors. Never had a Vanguard though. Tractor and get back to the house with it so I can cut some of that doggone forest I've got for a yard down. Like I said, I'm really seriously embarrassed about how tall it is. I got my brand new 4-stroke weed eater, Cub Cadet. The name wasn't really super important to me. But I got it anyway. Alright. I gotta come out of here kind of straight. I got a little bit of weight on the back of this thing. Ugh. Here went the jack digging into the ground. Okay. Whew. Now I've got a mower that I can cut grass with. About it tearing up on me for a while because it's a pretty new mower, so it's got a cracked head. Big deal. So what? That hood don't make it mow or not mow. The only thing I'm really not super stoked about is the fact that it's a hydrostatic drive. So you drive with, basically you got pedals, you don't change gears on it. You shift the thing, or you mash the pedal on the, it's backwards from a car too. Your reverse pedal's on the far far right hand side on the outside. Oh shoot. A lot steeper than it looked. Your pedals on the far out, the reverse pedal is a little tiny pedal on the outside, and the forward pedal is the big pedal on the inside, on the right hand side of the deal. Yeah, I think I got mine and Michael's money's worth. Well, actually, I know my trailer has paid for itself about 10 times over now. That's 10 times that $1,000 has been saved, at least. And that 4,000-pound winch is yet again paying for itself. Worth it. I haven't been able to get that 10,000-pound winch to pay me back a dime yet because I haven't gotten off my butt and went and had the bar cut to make the front receiver mount. I don't want to go back into Michael's shop and dink around with those kind of tools without him there. They probably wouldn't have a problem in the world with it, but anything that costs over just a few bucks, I'm not fooling with it. That's like his little expensive little code reader for the computer. Unless he hands it to me and steps me through how to do it, I'll not mess with it. Not because I couldn't sit there and mess around with it and figure it out on my own, because it's not mine and I wouldn't want to mess something like that up. And there's no way I'd have enough money to replace it if I tore it up. If I can't fix it or pay to replace it, I'm not touching it without that other person there. Just the way I am. This piece of junk, I believe it will start and run. Well, it would have if it hadn't been for the little bonfire I had going right there. There's a crack in the carburetor. Not sure if you can see it or not. Right where you see that line going down the side of the carburetor, well, you can see the crack right there. Yeah, I filled this sucker up with starting fluid and gasoline to get it, just to prime it and get it going. It leaked out that crack all over the deck. And when I finally had the battery over here, sparked that sucker off, and when I did, this whole thing went up in flames. Melted all that. Melted it but good. Melted a little bit of that. And I couldn't get it out. Bad thing is it was out in the middle of my field. Caught my field on fire too. So things got kind of hairy and interesting. Because of that fact, and because of the fact that I don't have another carburetor to go on this thing, I'm gonna pull this off of here, pull that steering gear right there off for the other one I've got over in front of my shed over there, because it's wore out. And stripping the gears, you go to turn it and it don't turn like that. You turn it all one way and it just sits there, where this one will actually turn right or left. That one's got one of the half-step motors on it that I can't stand. Half-step motor meaning that it's a 14.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. To me, the half-step motors are ones that they screwed up on, and instead of just making it the next size up, instead of being a 14, making it a 15, make it a 14.5, and have rings and pistons special made for it. Those typically are junk. The luck I've had with those is the bottom half of the motor falls apart. You got to take the motor off to clean the thing or whatever, and the bolts fall out of the bottom of the motor. They're sitting there on the deck. Of course, you're supposed to take it off every so often and tighten those up anyway. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is probably a great lawn tractor, or was at one point. And my brother-in-law put a lot of time into this. That's been completely rebuilt. In fact, I think my 15 horsepower John Deere that my sister-in-law stole after my brother-in-law died, I think some of the parts off of this one, or parts on this one, came off of that other one, because he couldn't get it running again. All it really needed was a switch. So a PTO switch, because on that one the PTO switch mounts right here, and when it sits out in the weather, it never fails. It always goes bad. Like every 2 or 3 years you got to replace it. Anyway, this one's getting stripped down. Salvage what parts I can off of it, take the blades off, they're still good, and then she's going to take a little trip to the junkyard unless somebody comes and talks me out of that 15 horse Kohler motor. Got that tractor completely free off of FreeCycle. Don't have a cent in it.